North to south, coast to coast, around the world. This is the Wells Report. We bring you news. We bring you analysis for fact of the news. We draw contrast between the facts and the analysis. We make commentary. That's my opinion. I differentiate between news and opinion on this broadcast. My opinion is not news. Will someone please tell all of these other people that do this job that their opinion is not news? Pass that along as quickly as you possibly can. My opinion is just as valuable as yours. That's the debate part. Yeah, you can interact with this newscast. In other words, I bring the news, and you know what you do? You can call the anchor on the set and ask whatever questions or make whatever comments you wish. Here's the telephone number, 817-379-2172. 817-379-2172. I just realized that after a wonderful, sprightly couple of hours at Topgolf, I'm still wearing my sunglasses. Oops. I'll take them off in due course. Welcome to the broadcast. I'm glad you're here, and let's get busy, shall we? A couple of very important Supreme Court decisions today. As a matter of fact, some of them, one of them was really good. One of them was not so much, okay? At least in my humble opinion. Let's talk a little bit, see how I differentiate between news and opinion. Okay. This from Fox News. The Supreme Court ruled today in a 5-4 decision. That's not the one I want. Let's see. Hold on. Nope, that's not the one I want. Hold on just a minute. Stand by. Please stand by. Please stand by. There we go. Okay. This is the one I want to talk about right now. We'll talk about the other one in just a couple of moments. Okay, just like this. Hold on. See, you think you got your crap together, and then all of a sudden, not so much. Let's talk. Here we go. The Supreme Court, this is from John Fritzy of USA Today. The Supreme Court today ruled against the Environmental Protection Agency's effort to regulate power plant emissions, dealing a blow to the Biden administration in one of the most significant climate cases decided by the high case in more than a decade. Chief Justice John Roberts wrote the opinion for a 6-3 majority, the latest in a series of major decisions on abortion, guns, and religious freedom, in which the court's conservatives largely stuck together. The court's 3 liberal justices dissented. At the center of the climate case was a question about whether the EPA had the authority to curb carbon emissions from power plants. Simmering just below the surface was a deeper debate over how much authority all federal agencies have to issue regulations absent explicit authorization from Congress. That is an issue with far-reaching implications. I have talked ad nauseum for decades about the fact that we have a major problem in that executive branch agencies believe that their regulations are law. They're not law until they're passed by Congress. Now, there's something here that kind of concerns me just a little bit. We'll get to it. All right. Capping carbon dioxide emissions at a level that will force a nationwide transition away from the use of coal to generate electricity may be a sensible, quote, solution to the crisis of the day, wrote Roberts. But then he said it wasn't plausible that Congress intended to give the Environmental Protection Agency the power to regulate those emissions without saying so in the law explicitly. A decision of such magnitude and consequence rests with Congress itself, he said, this is John Roberts speaking, or an agency acting with clear consent of lawmakers. That's the problem that I have. That is the problem I have, without the clear consent of lawmakers. What we have discovered when it comes to Roe v. Wade and a bunch of other very important issues that the Congress should have dealt with is these people will evade responsibilities when they can, especially over very important hot-button issues where, say, for example, the fascist stomping of people who disagree is so prevalent. And I part of me understands what the politicians are doing. But all I can tell you is that it's, this is not something that we want. We don't want to have an agency acting with the clear consent of lawmakers. No, we want these people on the record. We want these people casting votes, saying, yeah, the EPA can do this. No, the EPA can't do that. and all other executive branch agencies. Every single regulation in every single executive branch agency needs to be codified as law by the legislative branch of this nation, or they need to be thrown out. The Constitution says nothing about governance via bureaucratic fiat. It says nothing about that. And it has to stop. And this is a first and important step, even though the equivocation of John Roberts is annoying. In a dissent joined by the court's other two liberals, Associate Justice Elena Kagan wrote the court was stripping away the EPA of vital authority. No, the EPA shouldn't have had that authority in the beginning. Neither should the FCC, neither should the FDA, neither should so many other executive branch agencies. Until it's codified by law, it's just people cooperating. And I got to tell you something, a couple of years ago, people died in the state of Texas because of all this rigmarole regarding coal-fired power plants and how you had to get a government waiver to be able to fire those things up when ERCOT, the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, which is an absolute idiotic name for a group of people that simply plays the game of economic control of electricity. Anyway, what ended up happening was 300 people died. They froze to death in their house because power went out. No, we're not playing this game anymore. This is absolutely ridiculous. It's not stripping anything of anything. It's not stripping the EPA of anything. As far as I'm concerned, the EPA needs to get thrown away in toto, thrown in a trash can, and buried, actually encased in concrete and buried in the deepest part of the ocean. Kagan said the stakes here are high, yet today's court prevents congressionally authorized agency action to curb power plants' carbon dioxide emissions. That is not an issue. Carbon dioxide is not a problem in this atmosphere. Carbon dioxide represents 0.06% of this atmosphere. 0.06. If our atmosphere is going to essentially kill us all over such a small amount of a particular gas, then we're dead already. It's ridiculous. The stakes aren't high. The court appoints itself instead of Congress or the expert agency, the decision makers on climate policy. I cannot think of many things more frightening. I can think of these same so-called experts on climate policy making decisions that destroy the American economy. I find it ridiculous. I find it absolutely ridiculous. By the way, climate change was not discussed widely during the oral arguments because it's a hoax. The case arrived at the high courts as scientists, U.S. military officials, and the United Nations has warned about dire and imminent consequences of that phenomenon. No, there's none of that. The atmosphere is not going to kill us, and certainly carbon dioxide is not the issue. This is a government swindle. It is a transnational government swindle. It is a crock of garbage. Garbage. If you don't want so much carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, plant a couple of trees. There are 300 million people in the United States. If all of us plant 2 trees, by golly, that's 660 million new trees. End of carbon problem. But no, that's not the issue. The only way that you can solve carbon problems, according to politicians, is to pay them money. It's a swindle. Climate change is a hoax. And just because we've got scientists, okay, who? We got scientists, the U.S. military officials. Yeah? U.S. military officials like who? General Martin Milley? That kind of government official? That kind of U.S. military official? Don't get me wrong, I'm not casting aspersions on the good general, chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. All I can say is his politics are showing. This is ridiculous. Here we go. A report in April found that without immediate emissions reductions limiting global warming to 1.5 degrees Celsius, a key cutoff for curbing sea level rise is beyond reach. Sea level rise. Okay, all you guys take a glass of ice water, fill it to the very, very rim. Okay? Fill it to the very rim. Tell me when it overflows. Idiotic. Idiotic. By the way, in case you're wondering, sea level rise is not that big a deal. New Orleans is below sea level. Yet it seems to manage. The entire country of the Netherlands is below sea level. They manage. Are you trying to tell me that the oceans will rise and we will all die? No, that's not going to happen. Well, the climate's getting warm. The climate's getting warm. Okay, so you're saying that the entire Earth is going to end because of warm weather? Really? Seriously? Yeah, let's go ahead and just pump the brakes on some of that garbage. How about that? And that's exactly what the Supreme Court of the United States did. All right? Excellent. I'm very, very happy about that particular circumstance. That was good. Okay? Then, of course, there is an opinion piece by Mustafa Santiago Ali of the National Wildlife Federation, who says, I grew up near a coal power plant. This EPA decision will worsen public health injustices. Really? The Supreme Court decision in West Virginia versus Environmental Protection Agency, which chips away at the Clean Air Act and the EPA's authority, will be remembered for many reasons, as this term's final sweeping act of the court's conservative supermajority, a result of a decades-long conservative legal crusade against environmental protections and a significant setback against climate action. This grievously wrong decision, however, should be understood first and foremost as a clarion call and an invitation for action. I don't have really any problem with that. By all means, pass any law you can get passed. Please, by all means, pass any law you'd like to get passed. It's okay with me. If you think that some of these laws need to be passed, go ahead. Go ahead and give it a shot. But the days of essentially having executive branch agencies just pull this stuff out of their briefcases and throwing it at the feet of everyone and trying to destroy significant parts of our economy are over. And if you happen to be running one of these executive branch agencies, yeah, you better put your politics in your pocket. That's what you got to do. And so this guy's saying, I grew up near a coal power plant. The EPA decision will worsen public health injustices. Yeah, right. So let's see. I wonder how old Mr. Ali is. Let me see if I can look at him. He's probably somewhere in his late 30s, I would say. He's probably in his late 30s, which means he did not grow up in a coal power plant that killed anybody. Because by that time, coal power plants had cleaned themselves up to the point that none of that stuff was still happening. In other words, this is another Silent Spring hoax. Time for us to get control of this. I'm talking about we, the people of the United States. How can we do this? We can elect other people. I'll tell you more in a moment. You're listening to the Wells Report. Back with more in a moment. This is me thanking you. This is the Wells Report. John David Wells giving you the news, analysis, commentary, and debate. Our telephone number is 817-379-2172. We talked about the EPA decision from the Supreme Court today. Also, the Supreme Court ruled 5-4. The Biden administration can repeal the Migrant Protection Protocols, commonly known as the Remain in Mexico policy. This reverses a lower court ruling. Under that policy, migrants seeking entry into the U.S. had to stay in Mexico as they awaited hearings. The Trump administration put the policy in place so that migrants could not be released into the U.S. The Biden administration tried to repeal the policy, but was previously blocked by a lower court. At issue was whether the Department of Homeland Security's suspension and subsequent termination of the policy violated a federal law that requires the migrants be detained or, if they arrive from a contiguous country, sent back. In other words, if they came from Mexico, they could be sent back to Mexico. Here is the relevant language. The government's rescission of MPP did not violate Section 1225 of the INA, Immigration and Nationality Act, and the October 29th memoranda did constitute final agency action, said Chief Justice John Roberts. The statute Roberts cited, 8 U.S. Code Section 1225, says that someone applying for admission shall be detained for a proceeding unless they are clearly and beyond doubt entitled to be admitted, and also says that if they're from a contiguous territory like Mexico, the Attorney General may return the alien to that territory as they await a hearing. Texas and Missouri had pointed to this language in arguing the Remain in Mexico policy was necessary to adhere to this law. Without the ability to detain everyone, the states argued in their lawsuit, sending them back was possible, when possible, is necessary. The court's majority pointed to language in the law that says the government may return migrants to a contiguous territory, noting the discretionary nature of the wording. While all sides agreed on that, it was the state's interpretation and that of a lower court ruling that a return is required if a person is not detained that the court disputed. Okay? This is technical. All right? This is a technical decision. By the way, this is from Fox News. The problem is the statute doesn't say anything like that, Roberts wrote in his opinion, which was joined by Justices Stephen Breyer, Sonia Sotomayor, Elena Kagan, and Brett Kavanaugh. Roberts explained that had Congress meant for a return to be mandatory in the event that there was a lack of compliance with the detention requirement, it would have said so in clear language. That is a good point. Listen here. Chief Justice Roberts says the statutory grant of discretion here contains no such caveat. We will not rewrite it to include one. It's not their job. Roberts does the right thing here. The court also pointed to the foreign affairs consequences of requiring a return, pointing to how the Constitution only authorizes the executive branch to handle direct diplomacy with other countries, and how the lower court's ruling against the Biden administration would have imposed a significant burden on the executive's ability to conduct diplomatic relations with Mexico. The court argued the return to Mexico policy applies exclusively to non-Mexican nationals who have arrived at ports of entry that are located in the United States, and therefore the executive branch cannot unilaterally return these migrants to Mexico. Roberts cited a Biden administration claim the policy also negatively impacted other areas of relations with Mexico. Yeah, I'll bet. Yeah. By the way, I can only say that maybe the Mexican policy of allowing these people to walk through their country on their way to the United States have negatively impacted other areas of relations with us. I could be wrong. Okay? There's more to this story, so we've got to spend some time talking about it. We will get there coming up in just a couple of moments. Also, by the way, I want to explain to those people watching that we will be chatting about the chat room during the next break. Okay, so we'll be doing that during the next break. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Our telephone number is still 817-379-2172. Give me a buzz. Talk about the issues of the day. Back with more in a moment. Thanks for joining us. This is the Wells Report. Thanks for joining us. Okay, so we're going through this decision regarding Title 42. And this gets into the legal weeds. Okay? And having read this, I understand what the court's trying to do. Okay? This essentially is an admonishment of bad law. In other words, what Chief Justice John Roberts says is very important. Okay? Let me give this to you one more time. The court's majority pointed to language in the law that says the government may return migrants, may return, not shall return. That's a mistake. Now, may return migrants to a contiguous territory, noting the discretionary nature of the wording, goes on to say the statutory grant of discretion here contains no such caveat. In other words, Roberts said in his opinion, the statute doesn't say anything along the line of that a return is required. He says the problem is the statute doesn't say anything like that. And then the key sentence here is the statutory grant of discretion here contains no such caveat. We will not rewrite it to include one. Again, a completely proper Supreme Court response. Here's the rub. Politicians who have proven, and notice I didn't say Democrat politicians, although they are the main force behind all this. But politicians really don't have a problem with open borders. They really don't have a problem with the flood of illegal immigrants into our country. They have no problem with that. Either side. Consequently, the only people that have a problem with that are the people that actually have to pay the bills, that have to endure the murders, the DUI traffic deaths, the overall miscreancy, in a lot of cases, just miscreancy of illegals coming to this nation and without real understanding of what life in America means. I'm going to sneeze here in a minute. And so the court, essentially makes this conversation, makes this decision in a vacuum. All right? Now, there were dissenting opinions. Okay? I'm going to sneeze. I'll turn this down. Ooh, sorry. Allergies. I didn't have allergies before I came to Texas. Man. Mountain cedar. Nah. Where was I? Okay, here we go. So the court argued that the return of Mexico policy applies exclusively to non-Mexican nationals who have arrived at ports of entry that are located in the U.S. Therefore, the executive branch cannot unilaterally return these migrants to Mexico. Also correct. All right. So under the Court of Appeals interpretation, Section 1225 authorized the district court to force the executive to the bargaining table with Mexico over a policy both countries wish to terminate and to supervise its continuing negotiations with Mexico to ensure that they are conducted in good faith. The stark consequence confirms our conclusion Congress did not intend Section 1225 to tie the hands of the executive in this manner. In other words, what I'm trying to tell you is the politicians in Congress who wrote this law poorly did not want to encumber the executive branch from having to do something, which is also the executive branch being politicians, other politicians want to have happen in the first place. See what I mean? That's where this comes from, because this decision, unless you really think about it, is a head scratcher. Every administration, including the Trump and Biden administrations, has utilized this authority to some extent, ruling that repealing the Remain in Mexico policy does not violate the Immigration and Nationality Act, The Supreme Court said the lower court should now look for the first time at whether the Biden administration's October 29th, 2021 memo terminating the policy was in compliance with the Administrative Procedure Act protocols that govern actions of federal agencies. Okay. Justice Kavanaugh, in a concurring opinion, this is Kavanaugh now, also referenced the parole option, stating that both parole and return are legally permissible options, but options nonetheless. What if they don't put them on parole? No big deal. That's okay. Amy Coney Barrett, in a dissenting opinion, said she agreed with the majority's view of the relevant immigration law, but believed the court's opinion in a separate case issued 2 weeks ago impacted the issue of whether lower courts had the jurisdiction to hear the case in the first place. Instead of ruling on the case, she argued, the Supreme Court should have sent the case back down for a lower court to consider the recent decision. I agree with the court's analysis of the merits, but not with its decision to reach them. In a more contentious dissent, listen to this. Justice Samuel Alito, joined by Justices Clarence Thomas and Neil Gorsuch, argued that the government does not have the authority to release migrants into the U.S. if it is believed that they are not eligible for admission. When it appears that one of these aliens is not admissible, the government may simply release the alien into the country and hope the alien shows up for the hearing, which his or her entitlement to remain will be decided? ? They're not coming back. They're not going to take the chance. They're already in the country. They're already in the country illegally. Why would they need to come back to a hearing to find out whether that status of living in our country illegally could be taken away? They're not coming. And remember, there is no enforcement that deports people that are here living illegally. So that's a brilliant point by Alito. Another one. Congress has provided clear answers to that question. The answer is no. Also, Alito wrote, citing statutory language in such a case, a migrant shall be detained for either removal or consideration of an asylum application, something that also doesn't happen. Now, Alito acknowledged, as Roberts and Kavanaugh did, that returning a migrant who came from a contiguous territory is only one alternative along with parole. He cited a separate law that said parole is only to be used on a case-by-case basis for urgent humanitarian reasons or a significant public benefit, neither of which ever happens. So once again, this particular decision occurs in a vacuum. Okay, Alito continues. Due to the huge number of aliens who attempted to enter illegally from Mexico, DHS does not have the capacity to detain all inadmissible aliens encountered at the border. No one suggests that DHS must do the impossible, but rather than avail itself of Congress's clear statutory alternative to return inadmissible aliens to Mexico while they await proceedings in this country, DHS has concluded it may forego the option altogether and instead simply release into this country untold numbers of aliens who are very likely to be removed if they show up for their removal hearings. That practice violates the clear terms of the law, but the court in this decision looks the other way. He is completely correct. Completely correct. Okay? Then John Fritzie goes on to say this is a rare victory for the Biden administration. So when all this comes down, well, welcome to the flood of illegal immigration. This is an error. But whose error is it? You know, you can sit there and say the court sucks and they're terrible and they're awful and they're rotten and they're horrible and blah, 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 blah. You can say that all you want to. But the simple case of the matter is that that is not the issue. That is not the issue. So now we find ourselves in a position where, once again, y'all come, feel free. It stinketh. It really, truly does. It really does stink. And we're going to pay the price. Now, what will happen? Well, here in Texas, what's going to end up happening is that the Texas government, our government here in Texas, is going to go ahead and continue building the border wall. It has to now. You have to build that border wall, and you have to continue it all the way through the Texas border, and they will. until somebody tries to stop them, in which case that will once again expose this insidious political attempt to re-demography the United States of America to a more political circumstance, to a more political advantage. And they've got enough advantages, thanks. And especially the ones they take advantage of, which is all of them. This is not a good thing, at least in my opinion. And I've been down there. We lost 53 people here in the United States, illegal immigrants, every single one of them baking to death in a semi-tractor trailer truck in San Antonio. That this decision is going to make that more often. That's going to make that bad, tragic alternative happen more often. Instead of saying, hey, stop what you're doing, stay where you are, put your paperwork in, and if you are allowed to come in for asylum reasons, you'll be allowed to come in. No, now we just bring them in and set them loose. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And it's going to get a lot of people killed. Americans and illegal immigrants alike. Again, American politics is deadly, and we have to stop it. I mean, we have to stop this willingness to, for whatever reason, re-demography the United States of America for political advantage. We have to stop it. How do we do that? Well, these guys, the people that we currently have, are not going to do it. They are simply not going to make that decision. The political imperative is being served here. So the political imperative being served here, well, that's enough. For these people, they're not going to act. So what do? We get rid of those people and we put people in that will act. We make it an issue. We, the people of the United States. And once again, that responsibility, clearly enumerated in the Constitution of the United States, is something that, for whatever reason, we find ill at ease. We are ill at ease with actually doing something about it. Why? Those people are responsible to us. We have to elect people that operate in the interest of the people of the United States instead of the interest of people in Central American countries that live crappy lives because of crappy government and want to come to the United States where it's less crappy. Well, the problem with all that is the same problem that exists in Central America with crappy governments. Those same strategies are being pulled off by our government. Because the people of the United States have made this clear. Once again, we are electing the wrong people. We must stop electing the wrong people. Please heed these words. So let me just give you one more thing here. The Supreme Court of the United States did not screw up this ruling. This ruling actually makes sense. I like the fact that while John Roberts says, look, there's pointed language missing in the statute that Congress needs to fix, that while he says that, he gives them enough room to be able to continue with their political opportunity. The people of the United States made it abundantly clear with the election of Donald Trump that we're done with that. And so, with the diselection of Donald Trump, the people's voice, now stilled, reverts back to the political opportunity that politicians have enjoyed and have absolutely no problem with in ignoring the will of the people of the United States. It's all because we keep electing the wrong people. Too many deals. Too much bipartisanship. Bipartisanship. Bipartisanship is code for code is the ruling class will take care of everything. The rest of you people just keep writing your IRS checks, okay? Yeah, you Americans just keep writing your IRS checks, so that we can continue, recreating an America that's more friendly to politicians. Yeah, because the people that are coming here, they're used to living with governments that if you disagree with politicians, you get shot. All we're going to have to do is look at those people and go, you aren't trying to disagree, are you? No, we're not. Absolutely not. Well, because I'd hate to see what happens if you disagree with us. You're listening to the Wells Report. Back with more in a moment. And hello, chat people. Hello, chat people. Sorry it took me so long. I had a few things I had to take care of, like, for example, taking a pill to stop my allergies. Hello, Lois Floyd. Hello, Yvonne Field. Hello, Michelle Larrabee. Hello, Kelly Lyons. Happy Independence Day. It's the Independence Day weekend. It's going to start tomorrow, unless people just jump out of work early. No, the screen did not freeze. It was just your computer. Mike Renwee, hello. Hello, everyone. Let's see. Okay. Replying to Yvonne Field, mine's good. Yes. Okay. Or if we don't want carbon in our atmosphere, then we get our oil from another country that has no regulations. Yeah. That's great, isn't it? Yeah, let's buy our oil from countries that don't care one way or another about another. What am I upset about today, JD? Well, this is not about grievance. This is about news reporting. Okay? We were talking about scientists, about climate change scientists. Ann Hoy Guzman rightly points out, you mean scientists who don't know the number of genders that we actually have? Jessica Hamilton Kennedy says something that most of us wish for at least once or twice a year, if not every month, if not every week, if every day. Maybe the oceans will rise and flood California. Yeah. Yeah, we could really use some rain. They need to stop programming drought. Okay. So if all the snow worldwide melted, exactly how much would the ocean supposedly rise, or perhaps how much would they actually rise? Now, that's not that that's even possible for the snow in the North and South Poles to ever melt. Well, it actually will melt at some point. All right. Because the Earth is going to get warmer, but it's not going to be because of human activity. Too bad the fool doesn't see the damage that windmills do. Yeah, Deadbird Gulch outside Palm Springs. Boy, that place smells great. Whew, nothing like the smell of decomposing birds. Yeah, let's see. Good afternoon, Isaac. Good to have you back. Let's see. I wonder where the protesters are today. Everywhere. Take the iced tea challenge. Fill a glass full of ice, pour tea to the top, wait for the ice to melt, get back to me to tell me how much the tea rises. Yeah. Let's see. Gail Marlowe says hi. Amos Walk says hi. Jeanette Stultz says hi. And Mike Renwee says that's the truth. And there you go. That's the chat. We have 20 seconds left. Do you guys feel better? You can call anytime you want to, right? It's easy. Off we go. Here we go. This is the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. We're talking about the Supreme Court of the United States, and there is other news about the Supreme Court. Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, a former public defender who rose to become a judge on a powerful federal appeals court, made history today. She is now the first black woman to sit on the Supreme Court. She's 51 years old, a Miami native, Harvard-trained lawyer, and you know what that means. That's, by the way, not a shot at Ketanji Brown Johnson. That's a shot at Harvard. She was confirmed by the Senate nearly 3 months ago. She takes the seat formerly occupied by Associate Justice Stephen Breyer. For 28 years, he retired today. Previously a judge on the powerful U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia Circuit, Jackson took the oath of office at a fraught moment for the High Court as decisions to overturn Roe v. Wade and expand access to handguns have exacerbated tensions among justices and underscored divisions among America over culture war issues. But none of that was on display as Chief Justice John Roberts administered one oath of office to Jackson and Breyer, for whom Jackson clerked for more than 20 years. He administered the other. With that, Jackson became the 104th Associate Justice of the United States, marking the first time women and people of color outnumber white men on the court. I'm truly grateful to be a part of the promise of our great nation, said Jackson. In brief remarks before the oaths were administered, Roberts noted that Jackson could now exercise her duties as justice. He said duty. That will allow Jackson to get her chambers and staff set up in preparation for the start of what appears to be another intense term this fall. I'm pleased to welcome Justice Jackson to the court and to our common calling. While the justices return to Washington in October with Jackson in her seat, there will be 4 women and 2 African Americans on the nation's highest bench for the first time in the court's 233-year history. Her hard work, integrity, and intelligence have earned her a place on the court, said Breyer. I'm glad for America, Ketanji will interpret the law wisely and fairly, helping that law to work better for the American people whom it serves. The sad thing about this is that Ketanji Brown Jackson was confirmed 53-47. You know, and that's sad. It's sad. Supreme Court justices should face less difficulty, in my view, but that's just me. Because Supreme Court justices should be, you know, relatively, that's a benign appointment. You know, I mean, you would think it would be. But politics has permeated the court, both inside and outside. And we keep seeing justices essentially remake the Constitution in light of politics. And there isn't that much difference. You can clearly draw a line between, say, for example, the liberal wing of the Supreme Court and what are creative interpretations of the Constitution. For example, with Roe v. Wade's, the overturning of Roe v. Wade, 3 of those justices could not see the hole in the thinking that brought Roe v. Wade into prominence in the first place. Well, just how much of a constitutionalist are these people? I mean, they're supposed to be the ultimate experts in the Constitution, but they're not. And they consistently prove that they're not. So, what's that all about? I'm really interested in hearing that. I truly am. You know, I'm truly baffled by that. By the way, I have to point this out. Ketanji Brown Johnson does not know what a woman is. While we're talking about people that I don't know have qualifications to sit on the High Court of America, she doesn't know what a woman is. She can't testify as to what a woman is. How is she going to decide a constitutional case involving gender if she doesn't know what a woman is? Because she's not a biologist. I don't know. I'm not taking a slap at the justice. I'm just pointing out that that was a political answer. And why is it that the Supreme Court of the United States is making, why would a justice who wants to be on the Supreme Court answer with politics instead of law? There is a legal definition for what a woman is. The female of the human species. She could have said that. The female of the human species. But she couldn't say that. Because right now we're trying to figure out just exactly what a woman is and what a man is. And some men can be women and women can be men. And some men can do this and some women can do that. And I'm looking at this going, why in heaven's name do all of us put up with this level of just insolent, foolish garbage. Why do we do that? Once again, we do that because we have the wrong people in power. Good news, there's an election coming up just a few months from now, in fact. Please make good decisions. My wife says that. My wife says that all the time. Please make good decisions. Okay. We're going to try to make good decisions. Yeah, we're going to try to do that. You're listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. This is the first hour. We have 2 more. So make sure that you share this with all your friends, and we will be back in moments. Until then, have yourself a nice respite from this hour of the show to the next. Back in a moment. Hang on just a second. I got to hit this thing. I'll be back a little bit, okay? North to south, coast to coast, around the world, this is the Wells Report. Greetings. Glad you're here. We bring you the news, the real news. We bring you analysis for fact from that news. I make commentary on the facts and the news, drawing contrast between the two. And because my commentary is my opinion, and only that, my opinion is not news. It is just as valuable as yours, which is why we invite debate. And here's how you do that debate. What you do is you say, okay, off we go, etc. I'm going to do something here. I'm having trouble with my chat. By the way, you can chat with us. Hang on a second. Hello? Question mark. Okay. No. All right. I've logged in again. What is it? What happened to what has happened to my machine? I'm very concerned about this. Yeah. Because I'm not getting the chat. And I don't know why. It stopped. It stopped at 1440. No, I'm sorry. It stopped at 1431. I don't get it. I can see it, but for some reason I'm not. Let's see if this does it. No, chat overlay. I can do that. That way you don't see. Okay, well, all right. But now the chat isn't working, so I'm going to have to, at some point, I'm going to have to redo this. So see if I can get it to snap out of it. All right, so I better put the chat overlay back up. Let's see, what can I do? Can I scroll that? I can't. National Geographic had an article, there's global warming on Mars too. Those Martians better go green before they extinct themselves. Yeah. Yeah, there you go. So it's time for us to reboot ski. Yes, Mike, we're going to have to reboot ski. I should have done that during the break, but I didn't. So there you go. The President of the United States, for reasons that I am extremely concerned about, made yet another truly odd statement today. President Joe Biden said he would support changing filibuster rules in the Senate to make it easier to codify the right to abortion and the right to privacy in federal law following last week's Supreme Court ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade. Biden called the ruling outrageous and destabilizing and said the Congress must overturn it by writing Roe v. Wade into law. So far, I really don't have any problem with any of that, except about the part where he says if the filibuster gets in the way, it's like voting rights. We provide an exception for this. Evidently, the president is beginning to screw up syntax when it comes to American English. If the filibuster gets in the way, it's like voting rights. It should be, we provide an exception for this. To the store for food I go. I don't get it. All right, so what else? Because of the filibuster, 60 votes are needed in the Senate to pass most legislation. Changing the filibuster would mean senators would need a simple majority to write the law Roe v. Wade decision established as a constitutional right to abortion in 1973 before it was overturned last week. I don't have any problem with trying to do that. But changing the rules because you've had trouble getting something done is not the way to do it. That's juvenile. Changing the rules of the game because you're not winning is a juvenile act. By the way, the filibuster is a problem. There are not enough votes to make it happen. A bill that would enshrine Roe v. Wade into law failed by a 49-51 vote last May. And then there was this. Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell said Biden's remarks about the Supreme Court ruling were inappropriate. Attacking a core American institution like the Supreme Court from the world stage is below the dignity of the president. Beyond that, President Biden's attack on the court are unmerited and dangerous. He's upset that the court and the people, through their elected representatives, will have a say on abortion policy. He then added that this does not destabilize democracy, it affirms it. By contrast, it is behavior like the president's that undermines the equal justice and rule of law. Okay, look, the rules of the Senate are simple. They have been in place for time immemorial. They protect the minority in making law, right? And so what happens is this: the rules of the Senate should not be changed simply because you're not getting your way. What you should do is you should win more elections. In order for the Democrat Party to win more elections, they really need to start making policy that makes them win more elections. Okay? That's the problem. A filibuster is a political procedure in which one or more members of a legislative body prolong debate on proposed legislation so to delay or entirely prevent a decision. It's sometimes referred to as talking a bill to death or talking out a bill. It's an obstruction, and it's there to protect. It is there to protect the minority. Okay, I find myself in a situation where this is pretty easy. This is pretty easy to uphold. It's a powerful device in the U.S. Senate. The Senate rules permit a senator or senators to speak as long as they wish on any topic they choose, unless 3/5 of the senators duly chosen and sworn, 60 out of 100, bring debate to a close by invoking cloture. Even if a filibuster attempt is unsuccessful, the process takes floor time. This has been referred to as the soul of the Senate. It is not, however, part of the U.S. Constitution, becoming theoretically possible with a change of Senate rules only in 1806. The first time it was used was 1837. It was strengthened. The filibuster rule was strengthened in the 70s. In recent years, the majority has preferred to avoid filibusters by moving to other business when a filibuster is even threatened, and attempts to achieve cloture have failed. As a result, in recent decades, this has come to mean that all major legislation, apart from budgets, now requires a 60% majority to pass. Now, what I want to get across here is that the very brave Mitch McConnell is not talking about the filibuster being set aside so that they can pass Roe v. Wade law. Right? What they're talking about at this particular moment is he's talking about how, well, he's attacking the Supreme Court. Well, that doesn't have anything to do with what we're discussing there, Mr. McConnell. Laura Brown is the director of the George Washington University Graduate School of Political Management. She warned that it's a short-sighted tactic that could pave the way for a future Republican majority to pass a nationwide ban on abortion. In other words, the Democrats are shooting themselves in the foot on this. The president can invoke the idea that what we need to do more than anything else in the entire world is to get rid of that pesky filibuster. Get rid of the rule that forces 60 senators to agree. He can say that all he wants to. But I am not exactly sure that that's where he wants to go. Now, to be fair, the Republican Party has done this too, and I was equally annoyed with it. This is not something that we should play with. The idea that people should get together and figure something out is what we hire these people for. Also, the simple case of the matter is, when you look at constitutional structure and the way the United States has run its governmental business, it should be difficult to pass any bill. It's one of the constraints. It's one of the constraints on a runaway American government. We have seen the heavy-handed, absolutely inexcusable abuse of power by one party in this nation. And yes, at the risk of sounding like I'm anti-Democrat, the Democrats are responsible for it because they have the power in Washington. They have the House, they have the Senate, they have the presidency. And now what they want to do is they want to just simply dispense with the last protection of the Republican minority in the U.S. Senate because it's in the way, which takes us back to the runaway federal government. The Constitution of the United States limits federal government action. The filibuster is a guarantor of that limited action. But the people in Washington, D.C. don't want to be limited by anything. Which takes me back at the risk of you rolling your eyes. He's going to say that again. Yes, I'm going to say it again. We keep electing the wrong people. We keep electing the wrong people. We need Americans in office, not politicians. And please, by all means, if you disagree, please say something. By all means, say something. Right? Let's see. No. Okay. So Isaac just said, laugh out loud. You just mentioned Republicans have done it, and now you're saying Democrats, the one party that abused the Constitution. You're not listening. You know, Isaac, when you argue, you really have to listen to what I'm saying. I said that the Republicans have done this too, and I was equally annoyed by it. Are you paying any attention at all? That's just a question I need to know. Because if you're not paying attention at all, why am I interacting with you? Got to pay attention to what I say. Since the Supreme Court decision last Friday, President Biden has faced pressure from Democrats to push bold action to try to protect abortion rights, such as setting up abortion clinics on federal property. That's great. You can't drill for oil on federal property, but you can set up an abortion clinic. Mm-hmm. Time for people to see a real forceful push for it. Use the bully pulpit. We need more, says Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, the Democrat from New York, in a tweet. The Progressive Change Campaign Committee, which backs liberal candidates seeking office, called on President Biden to convene lawmakers supportive of abortion rights immediately for a vote. This cannot wait till after the midterms, the group said. That's right, it can't. Why? Because the Democrats are going to be out of power. And so rushing law like this by getting rid of the filibuster, real bad plan. Real bad plan. Bad plan. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. Okay? There you go. By the way, in case you're wondering, Isaac, listen up. There is a thing called conservative overreach. All right? And we're going to be talking about that coming up in just a couple of seconds. But one last thing. Do we really want to set aside a law that's been on the books in the Senate, a Senate rule since 1806? I say no. What do you say? Call us on the Wells Report. Hey, by the way, you guys, okay, I'm about to reboot this thing. I'm going to reboot this, so you may have to sign back in, okay? So that's what I'm going to do right now. See you in a minute. Well, that was easy. So somebody give me a text. Somebody text me something. Do it. Do it now. Please. Ha! Ha 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 ha! It worked. No drop, no drop. No drop, no drop. Hello. Excellent. See? Well, that was really kind of slick, actually. Hi, Marcy B. That was really kind of slick because I hit the reloaded. It just reloaded it and it didn't change anything. That's awesome. Facebook here now. Yes. Yes, Jeanette. Text me now. You already did. Already did. Okay. Yeah, that was fast. That was real quick. I figured we'd have to reconnect to the show. Apparently, you did not. Isaac, did you make the trip?
Hello? Hello?
On your cell or new Wells report number? No, Cleo. Just right here on the text. You can text me anytime you want, of course, but this is you don't have to. Yeah, yeah. The new Wells report number does not take texts at all. At all. Does not take texts at all. Lame line? What? Through Messenger. Testing 1, 2, 3. I got you. Got you, Lima Charlie there, Gary Abshire. 30 seconds. You are listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We are talking about all manner of things having to do with Supreme Court, the political interaction with the Supreme Court, etc. And earlier this week, Monday, in fact, the Supreme Court said that a high school football coach who knelt and prayed on the field after games was protected by the Constitution. And that decision, opponents said, would open the door to much more coercive prayer in public schools. Now, what I've seen in this nation is when conservative ideology is say affirmed for whatever reason, conservatives start flying off at the handle and doing things that are un-American. Conservatives. Let me give you an example. 2 employees with a North Carolina company say they were fired after refusing to participate in the firm's daily Christian prayer meetings, which they said went against their respective religious beliefs. This is according to a lawsuit filed by the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission. The lawsuit seeks a jury trial. It was filed in U.S. District Court in Greensboro on behalf of John Magaha, a construction manager at Aurora Pro Services, and Mackenzie Saunders, a customer service representative at the Greenboro Residential Services Company, same company. The EEOC announced the lawsuit in a news release on Tuesday. Now, Mary Kate Littlejohn, a Greenville, South Carolina attorney, represents McGaha and Saunders. She declined comment on Tuesday of this week. No one from Aurora Pro Services was immediately available. Questions on the lawsuit were referred to an email address from which there is no immediate answer. In the complaint, the EEOC says daily prayer meetings are a part of Aurora's business model, although there is no reference to it on its webpage. Attendance at the prayer meeting is mandatory. Oh, really? Mandatory for employees and was a condition of employment regardless of a worker's religious beliefs or affiliation, according to the complaint. You have heard me talk about how companies doing businesses and certainly corporations doing business in the United States should be constitutionally compliant. Here's an example of one that isn't. You have the right to a religion, and you also have a right to not have a religion. You have a right to express your religion in the public square. You also have a right to not express your religion in the public square. This company also, from time to time, entertained prayers requested and offered for, quote, poor performing employees who were identified by name. Oh, really? Also, the complaint noted the company owner took attendance and would reprimand employees who did not attend. McGaha is an atheist. He was hired by the company June 8th, 2020. He said the prayer meetings, which initially lasted around 15 minutes, stretched to 45 minutes and even longer. Saunders, who worked at Aurora from November 2020 to January 2021, describes herself as agnostic. She also acknowledged the prayer meetings have become longer over time. You can't do this. You just can't do this. Okay? So if you wonder why it is that from time to time we have people in the government elected by the people of the United States who do un-American things, it's because they're trying to escape people doing un-American things. The Democrat Party does not have a patent on un-Americanism. This company proves it. Yeah, 45 minutes is an entire church service mandated by the company. I'm sorry you have lost this particular argument. So if you happen to work for that company, even if you are a Christian, I suggest you quit. And that's a note of caution for overzealous Christians. Pay attention now. This is the Wells Report. Greetings. My name is John David Wells. I want to thank you very much for being a part of our radio broadcast. You can do so by going to our chat. It's available on Facebook and on Twitch, and also on Twitter. And there's one other one. Grumpy. Yeah. Let's see. Going through some of these chats, by the way. Langston says forced worship. Let's see. Let me see what we got here. Hold on just a moment. I was just looking at that. Hold on. Okay, here we go. What's so bad about kneeling for a moment of silence before a game or anything? Just further proof the left objectifying. Yeah, it's not just the left. The rights are forcing people to pray. And Langston says forced worship is fake worship. No one should be intimidated into prayers or speech. That's anti-American. Correct. A prayer doesn't have to last all day. If you're praying in public, that's fine. Make sure you're doing it in public for the right reasons. Prayer is between you and God. Softball days, we always did it behind the dugout, not on the field. Well, there you go. Makes sense. I have a question for people who voted for President Joe Biden. This is going to sound a little weird. Okay? But here's what I want you to answer for me. Who did you vote for in the 2020 election? I know this sounds kind of strange. What? For people who voted for Joe Biden in the 2020 election, who did you vote for? I mean, really. If you'd like to go ahead and give me a call at 817-379-2172, by all means do that. Or if you want to answer via chat, that's good too. But if you're a Biden voter, who did you vote for? Because I'm pretty sure you think you voted for Joe Biden. What I'm also equally sure of, the answer, truthfully, is you have no idea who you voted for. I remember talking in the run-up to the 2020 election about the fact that Joe Biden was actually going to be the party standard bearer for that election. It was after a long campaign season and so on. It was after a long campaign season, and the Democrat Party realized they were about to nominate a socialist to be their party standard bearer, which of course would have destroyed their Democrat Party forever. And what's fascinating to me is the Democrat Party didn't realize that they could destroy their party forever until they started spoiling for passage of Roe v. Wade as a legislative bill. As soon as Roe v. Wade is codified in law through the Congress of the United States, the Democrat Party will be forever branded as the party of abortion. That's going to be a liability someday. A big one. And that's what they're being forced into doing. And the left doesn't get it because they're dumb. Witness the fact that the socialist left, their proud standard bearer is AOC and Bernie Sanders. Like I said, dumb. Once again, what I want to know is this. If you are a Biden voter, who did you vote for? The other day, Joe Biden showed everybody a card he was holding. Why he showed that card, no one really knows. I can read it, as a matter of fact. There are bullet points. Offshore wind drop-by sequence of events. You enter the Roosevelt room and say hello to the participants. You take your seat The press will enter. You give your brief comments, and he's got his finger over just how many minutes. The press will depart. You and Liz Schuer, President AFL CIO, will ask Liz Schuler a question. Liz is going to virtually, what is it? Liz is joining virtually you. Hang on just a minute here. Let me square this up. You thank the participants. Who wrote that card? Who wrote that card? Do you have any idea? Neither do I. Neither do you. 81 million Americans voted for President Joe Biden. Nobody has any idea who they actually voted for. You voted for the person that wrote that card. Here's another one. Today, the president hastily ended a press conference, turning his back on reporters as they shouted questions and declaring, "I am out of here." Biden answered several questions from a predetermined list of reporters during a press conference in Madrid, Spain. And then he said, "All right, guys," and attempted to wrap things up. Multiple reporters wanted to ask questions. Someone in the crowd promised to be quick, but Biden shut it down nonetheless. "There's no such thing as a quick one. I'm out of here." Walked away. So who came up with a predetermined list of reporters? Who? I voted for Biden, and I truly believe my vote counted for Biden. Well, that makes sense. But who did you actually vote for? Because what you've got here is you've got Joe Biden, but then you've got somebody standing behind Joe Biden sending him a list of things to do. Who's that guy? Who is that guy? Who's the guy that's determining which reporters get a chance to ask the president anything? Who is that person? Who's the person that cuts off video feeds of the president sometimes in mid-sentence? Who's that person? We don't know. Normally, in a presidential election, you have a pretty good idea who the person is that you're dealing with. Now, there are presidential advisors and so on and so forth, but these people are genuinely strong enough to be able to make their own decisions. And they do. Is Joe Biden making his own decisions? Yes or no? Do you believe that President Joe Biden, is actually making presidential decisions? Yes or no, and why? I don't think he is. I don't think he's capable of it. I think Joe Biden, never the sharpest rock in the box in the first place. I believe that he is sadly over his decision-making phase in his life. It doesn't happen to everyone, but it happens to a lot of people where suddenly their decision-making needs to be supervised. Okay? Now, Isaac points this out. Rumors had it that Nancy Reagan did the same thing with Ronald Reagan in his last 2 years. I agree. The difference in this premise that I'm discussing, Isaac, is that we knew who Ronald Reagan was. Remember, he had been in office for 6 years at that point. But he didn't come out of that surgery well. He didn't. And I could see it in his eyes. I even pointed it out. I said, there's something in Ronald Reagan's eyes I don't like. A vacancy. Just like I said with President Biden. By the way, he has that same vacant stare. But mainly what I see in President Biden is the way he walks. He shuffles. He shuffles. Why? So someone is treating the President of the United States like a puppet. Who is that person? That person is running the government as the president. That's the circumstance. This is bad. So, in other words, next time we vote for somebody, we better know who we're voting for. We had better find a way to make sure that the person is actually there. I mean, no disrespect to President Biden. As a matter of fact, I defended President Biden when he was running for president. I said this man is a gaffe-prone guy that will embarrass himself and the nation. And I have been correct. Now, got to be perfectly honest with you. George W. Bush was not exactly the slickest guy in the world, but at least he knew what he was doing. And I'm not sure that Joe Biden does. I am not sure. And I'm concerned about it. Because arguably we don't have a president. We have a committee. It's not the way we do things. It's a mistake. And it's also, by the way, if I can get slightly conspiratorial, here, it's dangerous. Who are the people behind the president? Who runs the presidency? Who does it? Because I don't believe that it's Joe Biden. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. Now, this committee has to deal with the same realities that every president does. But remember something. This committee is not held accountable. Joe Biden is held accountable. Even at this stage in his life, he's held accountable. But the differences in what Joe Biden said when he was there and Joe Biden now that he's not are stark. He's a functionary. We don't elect functionaries. We elect presidents. Don't we? I mean, one of the reasons why the United States did not adopt a parliamentary system is because the chief executive doesn't exist. There is a prime minister. It would be like the nation being run by the Speaker of the House. In other words, the people of the United States would really not have any access to having an executive running the country. Wouldn't have it. And that's the way it is in a parliamentary system. And by the way, who chooses the prime minister? The other ministers. Again, politicians electing politicians. It's not the way we do things here. We have an executive branch so that things can be done quickly. In a parliamentary system, the prime minister has to say whatever he has to say, and then he has to wait for parliamentary action. Well, that's not quick. So now we have this mini parliament behind the president. They're making the decisions. Who are they? And does anybody have any kind of real problem with the fact that none of these people are beholden to the people of the United States? I most assuredly do have a problem with that. And you should too, regardless of your politics. So, a manufactured puppet. Again, no disrespect to Joe Biden. Joe Biden took the job. But a manufactured puppet is the president of the United States with a committee behind him beholden to no one. Can other people see the danger? This is the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. Again, the following is not intended to disrespect President Biden. Reporting from CNN now, the vast majority of Americans across party lines are unhappy with the state of the United States, according to new polling. This is an Associated Press NORC survey. It was released yesterday. 85%, listen to this, 85% of U.S. adults say things in the country are headed in the wrong direction. 14% believe things are going in the right direction. In May, 78% of Americans said things were headed in the wrong direction. 21% said things were generally moving in the right way. This is even more amazing. You would expect the results of this survey to show this. 92% of Republicans think the country's going the wrong direction. Here's the surprise. 78% of Democrats are dissatisfied with the direction of the country. That's the highest number among Democrats since President Joe Biden took office last year. Whoa. Only 20% of Americans describe the nation's economy as good. 79% call it poor. By the way, it's relatively bipartisan. 90% of Republicans believe that the economy is poor. 67% of Democrats agree. That's two-thirds. Two-thirds of Democrats describe the economy as poor. A Reuters Ipsos poll, also released yesterday, finds rising discontent, especially among Democrats, in the days following the U.S. Supreme Court ruling that there was no longer a federal constitutional right to an abortion. Once again, this is bad writing. There never was a federal constitutional right to an abortion, which is what the Supreme Court corrected. And this is one of the reasons why there are issues in the country right now, because people aren't getting the correct story. Today, the Supreme Court came up with a decision that I thought was irresponsible and stupid. And that was that President Biden could overrule the use of Title 42. That was a mistake. It was settled in a legalist vacuum, just purely as a matter of law, which completely ignored the realities of an open border, which this will now aid and abet. So part of this isn't President Biden's fault. Part of it has to do with other factors. But since he's the guy at the top, he's the one that's shouldering a lot of these burdens. So a Reuters Ipsos poll released Wednesday also finds discontent, specifically among Democrats, in the days following the U.S. Supreme Court ruling that overturned Roe v. Wade. I'm not going to read it again. In that poll, 60% of Democrats said things in the country are on the wrong track. That, by the way, is up from 49% the prior week. By contrast, 86% of Republicans say things are on the wrong track, down slightly from 94% a week earlier. It's arguable that these people are not finding the same reasons for their discontent. Americans' view of President Biden remain underwater. A CNN poll of polls, average of surveys taken in the second half of June, find that 38% of Americans approve of his job, 57% disapprove. In the AP NORC poll, 28% of U.S. adults approve of President Biden's job performance on the economy, his lowest rating on the issue to date in that survey, 28%. When was the last time you saw a president's approval rating south of 30%? This is a major issue. Now, I say that, but remember something else. This is a poll. They are not reliable. But it is a good barometer for what we're dealing with here. I think that some of this is generally true. Some of it. The rest of it is just poppycock. 28% in the AP NORC poll of U.S. adults approve of President Biden's job performance on the economy, his lowest rating to date on that survey. 36% approve of his performance on gun policy. 53% approve of the way he's handled the coronavirus pandemic. The CNN poll of polls is an average of the 5 most recent nonpartisan national survey of adults on Biden's job approval that meet CNN standards. Isn't that interesting? Interesting turn of a phrase there. The poll of polls is an average of the 5 most recent nonpartisan national surveys of adults on President Biden's job approval. Good so far. And then that last clause, that meets CNN standards. Okay. What standards are those? When a pollster has released multiple polls in that time frame, only the most recent ones are included in the average. The poll of polls includes results from Quinnipiac, CBS News YouGov poll, the NPR PBS NewsHour Marist poll, and the NORC, the APA NORC poll conducted June 23 through 27. Also, the Reuters Ipsos poll conducted June 27th and 28th. An approval rating under 30% for a president of the United States. What if that president was a Republican and had an approval rating that low? You're listening to the Wells Report. Back with more in just a moment. Wow. That is unbelievable. It really is. North to south. Hi. North to south. Coast to coast. Around the world. This is the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. We do news here. Real news. Okay? Last hour, we were talking about one of the situations involving the President of the United States and who is actually running the government. Because when it comes right down to it, we simply don't know. Okay, the people of the United States, voted for Joe Biden. But who did we get? There are a couple of other things that I want to add to that conversation. Specifically, there was an article that I missed that I wanted to talk to you about. One of the things that you see presidents do is a gathering in the Oval Office, dignitaries, high government officials, and so on and so on. But what's happening here is the president doesn't do those. Why? It has been reported that the reason the president doesn't do those things is because the president's aides want him to stick to the script. Again, who are these people? Were they elected by anybody? No. Politico published a report today about the potential 2024 rematch between President Biden and former President Trump. While no official announcement has been made, with the exception of off-the-cuff remarks from Biden saying he intends to run again, it's all systems go inside the White House with aides and advisors taking initial steps to mount a bid despite ongoing health concerns and dismal polling. Now listen to this. Politico wrote that, quote, President Biden has little choice to say otherwise. An admission that he was making himself a lame duck would dramatically curb his political power. I don't believe that President Biden, in his own right, has any political power, which also concerns me. Because if he has no political power, who is it that does have the political power? And here's the clincher. There are people in Washington, D.C. who know who these people are, who is behind President Biden. But they won't tell us. The Republican caucus has to know what's going on behind the scenes, because they're certainly not talking to the president. They're talking to people below the president, around him. Has somebody in Washington, say for example in the Republican presidential caucus, has that person has any of those people put together the fact that they're not talking to the president? Now, there were meetings between Republican officials and the president, but nothing actually happened in those. Some Democrats have expressed private hopes that President Biden will make his final decision soon after the November midterms, giving the party plenty of time to prepare for what would likely be a wide-open primary if he opts not to run. On a personal level, acting promptly is not a Biden strength. Why? We talked about this last hour on the Wells Report. Because the committee has to decide. The president can't decide by himself. Either way, he cannot decide whether to run, as we've seen with all these backing ups. Vice President Harris said Joe Biden is definitely going to run for re-election, and I will be his ticket mate. I think she meant running mate, but anyway, and then that was walked back by the White House. So What I said is that it takes time to get the committee to act. The committee behind President Biden, the mini parliament. This inability to get a quick decision sparks fear within the Democrat Party that an announcement could be delayed until deep into 2023. One factor could hasten the decision and all but certainly ensure that Biden runs again if Donald Trump says he will too. That is political leverage. As Politico noted, if Biden chooses to run again, his 2024 campaign would be more rigorous since much of his 2020 campaign took place in his Delaware home because of coronavirus. Was that the reason why it was in his basement? I don't think so. I mean, President Trump didn't have any problem going anywhere during the 2020 campaign. He didn't have any problems. Why did Joe Biden have so many difficulties? Those allies who say that it's going to be a more rigorous campaign now worry that Biden may not be able to handle a more rigorous campaign. This, according to Politico. A bone he broke at his foot while playing with his dog in late November 2020 still occasionally bothers Biden, resulting in a slower and shorter gait. That's not real. His slower and shorter gait looks like Parkinson's to me. While the White House has largely abandoned using the Oval Office for press events in part because it can't be permanently equipped with a teleprompter. So Joe Biden can't go anywhere without a teleprompter. Now, arguably, President Obama did the same thing. He did the same thing. He didn't go anywhere without a teleprompter. But once again, we're not having Oval Office events because it cannot be permanently equipped with a teleprompter. And of course, the elephant in the room is who's writing the stuff on the teleprompter? Biden aides prefer the fake White House stage that's built in the old executive office building next door for those events, sacrificing some of the power of the historic backdrop of the otherwise sterile room that was outfitted with an easily read teleprompter screen. Again, who's writing the stuff on the teleprompter? White House has been very guarded when it comes to President Biden's accessibility to the press. He's only done one interview with a news organization so far in 2022, and we're not counting Jimmy Kimmel's interview on his broadcast. In the first year of his office, President Biden did 22 formal sit-downs compared to Donald Trump's 92 and Barack Obama's 156. Say what you want about President Obama. Say what you want to say about him, but the guy was there. You could ask him questions. I mean, he was there. He made himself available. The current president, President Biden, not that guy. The press has taken notice. Politico published a piece last year headlined, "Why Biden's Not Doing Interviews," which noted he conducted a more formal interview as vice president or more formal interviews as vice president than he has through the same period of his current gig. Okay, again, President Biden did more appearances and more interviews as a vice president than he's doing as the president. The Biden team is quick to note that he often takes questions from reporters after he does events. Allies of the president are quicker to note that no one outside the Washington press corps really cares about press access. Really. It sounds like a rationalization to me. But the lack of interviews reflects the bunker mentality this White House has taken with the media. As opposed to what? The bunker mentality with Joe Biden in his basement during the 2020 campaign? And so the bunker mentality with the media is especially extensive, where reporters are not allowed to follow up, push, and prod. In November, the New York Times drew attention to President Biden's low-key media strategy, which fueled concerns for his allies, or among his allies. Quote, he's not sat for interviews with the Associated Press, the New York Times, Reuters, the Washington Post, the Wall Street Journal, or USA Today. Even friendly venues like The Late Show with Stephen Colbert have gone unvisited, though Biden did sit down with Times columnist David Brooks. The Associated Press also noted that President Biden shied away from news conferences and interviews during his first year in office. The dynamic has the White House facing questions about whether President Biden, who vowed to have the most transparent administration in the nation's history, is falling short in pulling back the curtains on how his administration operates and missing opportunities to explain his agenda. He's not explaining his agenda. Other people are. Remember, the aides want him to stick to the script? This is important. This is something that I have a pretty good record of doing, which is being on top of things long before other people get it. About 18 months to 2 years. Okay? Isaac says he doesn't need to run again. He completed his primary task, which was to beat Donald Trump. Correct. By the way, Isaac, and then that's true. Now what I need to know is who should run. I don't think Kamala Harris has a chance. I don't. Who will run? Langston says, President Obama was an amazing president, misses calm demeanor and leadership. No drama Obama. Correct. I have a little problem with his socialist tendencies, but, there you go. That's just me. I wanted to bring that back up. And the reason I wanted to bring that back up is because, one, the first reason I brought that up is because I'm concerned about President Biden. I am concerned about President Biden essentially being abused by his handlers. And the other thing that I'm concerned about is those handlers didn't get elected by we, the people of the United States. And this troubles me greatly. You're listening to the Wells Report. If you have comments, please by all means share them. I certainly would like to hear them. It's essential that we do. We got to talk. We have to talk. Even if it's what you say. I think that President Biden is the greatest president in the world. Okay, you think he's the greatest president in the world. That's fine. But at least say so. 817-379-2172. The Wells Report returns in just a moment. This is the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. Telephone number is 817-379-2172. Chat room is going hot and heavy. You can be a part of that too. I look at it every time. Let's spend some time together. The Supreme Court returning the question of abortion to the states ignited a firestorm from liberal commentators across multiple platforms. Fox News reports that the Washington Post, day before yesterday, linked the abortion ruling to voting rights as they blasted the court. The conflation of abortion, so-called abortion rights and voting rights is, I don't know, it's a tough stretch. The perspective written by Leah Littman, Melissa Murray, and Kate Shaw said, quote, "It's no coincidence the court is making our democracy less democratic at the very moment it returns the issue of abortion to the political process." The piece went so far as to claim the Supreme Court had made several decisions that have hobbled the infrastructure of democracy. I came up with a concept that it is not democracy that is at risk here. It's democracy. Democracy. Democrats have long spent time doing their legislative business in the courts. It is a tried and true circumstance that led to a term known as court shopping, because they knew who they could grab a hold of and who they couldn't grab a hold of from a standpoint of when they wanted to legislate in the courts. This is not the way we do things in the United States. We do not live in a judicial oligarchy, which is what that is. No, what's happening here is a rollback of democracy, not democracy. These people go on to say what the court has done is to turn the issue of abortion over to politicians who are increasingly removed from voters' will. Really? As well as increasingly extreme on issues of reproductive rights and women's self-determination, they wrote, without noting that abortion had previously been handled by the Supreme Court, which is intentionally removed from the voters' will. You see, that's one of the problems here. They appear to imply the court has quietly been ensuring conservative electoral victories by allowing partisan gerrymandering across the United States. Partisan gerrymandering allows politicians to, in effect, select their voters and ensure that a particular party and politicians remain in power even when a majority of voters want them out. That's an assumption, or at least an assertion. By drawing voting districts the way that advantage their own, political parties ensure their continued primacy and artificially restrict the will of the majority, according to this claim. Now listen. Political gerrymandering of congressional districts happens every 10 years by the party in power, by the political party in power. It has always been that way. It is a necessary check and balance in order to have politicians doing the will of the people. If Democrats have a problem with congressional districts and the way they're drawn, and oh, by the way, the Supreme Court's going to hear a case regarding congressional districts being drawn in the next session. But if they have a problem, there's a sure way of solving it. And that is this: win more elections. In order to win more elections, you have to be less radical and more interested in putting political policy out there that people will vote for. That's what you have to do. Well, that's not what the Democrat Party does. That's why they don't draw congressional districts, which is why they're trying to go back into the courts to be able to find a remedy they themselves can't create for themselves. This is the Wells Report. This is the Wells Report. I am John David Wells. Thanks very much for being a part of our broadcast as we bring you the news, analysis for fact, commentary, and debate. So, the January 6th committee was treated to a special session involving a young woman who is known as Cassidy Hutchinson. And she said some things as a part of her testimony that were immediately turned aside with further scrutiny. That being said, the vice chairman of the committee said this. She put her full support behind the testimony of former White House aide Cassidy Hutchinson a day after her stunning testimony in front of the panel. Well, a lot of that stunning testimony does not stand even the most basic scrutiny. So why would she throw her full support behind it if this indeed was a committee trying to find fact? This is not a committee trying to find fact. Their hope to perhaps turn their evidence over to the Justice Department to get an indictment against President Trump is going to fall flat on his face because of this. Even a biased Justice Department cannot flout the law in that way. The nearest federal judge will immediately put a stop to it. So why would Liz Cheney do that? Well, because like most leftists, and by the way, you don't have to be a Democrat to be a leftist, progressive leftist, socialist, anti-American fascist. You don't have to be. You do not have to be a Democrat to do that. You can do that as a Republican. Liz Cheney proves it. So people get confused. People say, well, Liz Cheney's a Republican. Yeah, but she's also a leftist. She's a leftist, progressive, socialist, anti-American fascist. And so is Adam Kinzinger. Like I said, you do not have to. You don't have to be a Democrat to be a leftist progressive. So why is Liz Cheney doing this? Some supporters of former President Donald Trump trying to discredit Hutchinson Cheney on Wednesday, yesterday, called her testimony an unbelievable example of bravery and courage and of patriotism in the face of real pressure. But does any of it actually hold water? Once again, this is Liz Cheney doubling down on a very, very weak hand. Very weak hand. There's also this, and this got my attention. Unnamed people contacted witnesses about their testimony in front of the January 6th committee and referenced being loyal and reminded them that former President Donald Trump does read transcripts. This according to the committee. Again, Representative Liz Cheney declined to name the witnesses. Why? Why? If she knows that people associated with Donald Trump had been in contact with witnesses, why doesn't she name those people? Why? Because it would blow up in her face. That's why. More about that in a moment. Liz Cheney declined to name the witnesses, shared parts of the depositions during a committee hearing on Tuesday. She said they made these comments after being asked whether, quote, any former colleagues had contacted them prior to their sworn testimony. Former prosecutors and members of the committee who spoke to USA Today said the communications should be investigated as potential witness tampering or obstruction of justice. And once again, there's a problem. This is where the committee wants to have their cake and eat it too. They want it both ways. They are not paying attention to rules of judicial rules of evidence gathering and presentation. That means it's not illegal for someone to contact a witness before a committee. It's not a court of law. If it was a court of law, I'd be all over it. But this isn't a court of law. If it was a court of law, it wouldn't be happening because there simply is not enough real evidence to do any of this. And if the evidence being shown, remember, is edited, it is massaged, it is created. It's like taking a newspaper and cutting out letters and then forming them into a different message. That's what this committee is doing. That's why it has zero credibility and zero legitimacy. There's also another problem here. I'll get to it in a second. Ann Rowland, who served as the assistant U.S. attorney in the Northern District of Ohio from 1980 to 2018, said, well, it certainly is enough to investigate further, which is a statement that means what? You can invest anything you you can invest anything you want, investigate anything you want at any time for any reason. You have to have oath or affirmation to get a search warrant, but you can investigate anything you want to. She knows that. But she says, my goodness, this is disturbing enough to investigate further, which is simply a political statement. That's all it is. It has nothing to do with anything real. The critical phrase is corruptly influence, referencing a federal statute on witness tampering. But once again, that's law. This is political. You don't get to have it both ways. So it doesn't have any weight behind it. And then there's also something else. Let's assume, for the sake of argument, that indeed somebody from the former Trump administration contacted some of these former Trump administration officials and said, hey, okay, let's assume that there's some there. Let's get back to Cassidy Hutchinson. Who did she meet with before she testified? Adam Schiff. Did Adam Schiff try to coach her testimony at all? She was certainly coached. Adam Schiff, by the way, has done this many times before. He is a master at cherry-picking facts to suit a separate narrative. And that's what he's doing here. And that's what this testimony was about. That's why everybody's looking at this going, the committee is damaging itself more than it's actually finding fact. That's why all of this at the end of the day is going to go absolutely nowhere. They might be able to get something going on some reason, but as soon as it gets to a grand jury, the other side gets to talk. The other side gets to talk. And by the way, that takes it out of the political process for both sides. Suddenly, Donald Trump can hire his own attorney who will argue what have you. And he will have access to all of that information from the other side, and he will be able to refute it all in a grand jury, and there's no grand jury in the world that's going to come up with an indictment against a president who can actually defend himself. Now, just to be devil's advocate again, let's do this again for the sake of argument. You know, if I'm that committee, do you know who I subpoena next? Donald John Trump. That's who I subpoena next. But once again, I'm after truth. I'm after hearing the other side. I'm not after listening to the delirium of a lynch mob, which is all this is. There are huge problems here. So what we have is a political exercise in and of politics, in and of itself, without regard to any kind of jurisprudence or any kind of rules of evidence and law and presentation. And yet there's some people saying, my God, it's witness tampering. No, it's not. It's not witness tampering. See, okay, yeah, Isaac says this. Since this is in a court of law, why am I complaining about the other side not being presented? I'm not complaining about it. I'm not complaining about it at all. I'm just trying to say that since the other side is not being presented, it's valueless. It's nothing more than a nonstop, rather poorly done political propaganda piece. That's it. That's all there is. And so here we are. Here we are with this continuing to essentially try to throw stuff up against the wall to see if it sticks. They threw Cassidy Hutchinson against the wall. She didn't stick. She's not going to stick. Hearsay is not admissible. The last time that they actually had the full weight of the DOJ and so on and so forth, they lost. That will happen here. I mean, as soon as it gets into a court of law, let's take the January 6th mess from President Trump. President Trump said on camera, I saw it myself, let's go to the Capitol and have our voices heard and do so peacefully. He got impeached for it. He's being impeached again for it as a private citizen. This is nothing more than character assassination. He'll probably sue. We'll see. If he wasn't running for president again, he probably would sue, and he'd win. Now, during that same time frame, not the same time frame, but during the 2020 election, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris were openly telling people who were burning things down in cities across the nation that they would bail them out. Okay, so who's trying to foment a riot more? I think that's an obvious answer. Also, there are people in the Democrat Party that just flat say, run in the streets and do whatever you think you should. Again, who is more guilty of fomenting a riot? The answers are obvious. So here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing these statements being made that skirt accusations but don't quite make them. It would be no problem whatsoever for Liz Cheney to say, here are the witnesses that were contacted. Here are the people that contacted them. Let's get busy. Except she doesn't have a leg to stand on. She has no case. No case at all. Going to happen here. This is going to amount to nothing. All it's doing is damaging the Democrat Party, trying to damage President Donald Trump so that he doesn't run for office again. Error. And it's going to haunt him. And it should. You know, this country has lived through some remarkably dirty politics. I mean, earlier in the nation's history, the things that were said about politicians of the other party were enough to absolutely curl your hair. But you know what? This is some of the most country damaging stuff. You know, President Trump is routinely criticized just about everywhere because he believes that the 2020 election was fraudulent, damaging democracy. What's this doing? What's the difference? What is the difference? This committee, every single moment it speaks, is infuriating and essentially calling out 74 million people that voted for this guy. They're not changing any minds. They're not going to. This is just damaging the nation. I wish they would stop. This is the Wells Report. You are listening to the Wells Report. Hang on a second. Okay, there you go. So somebody is pointing out that the reason that nobody is being named is because they're worried about Cassidy Hutchinson being hurt by someone. As a matter of fact, this person refers to it as the Trump mob. The same mob that attacked election officials, which you refused to report on. What attacks? I assure you, with as biased a press as we had, that if actual election officials were actually attacked by actual Trump officials or Trump operatives, it'd be on the front page of every newspaper in America. Haven't seen a thing. I refuse to report on it because it's not a story. Or I would have seen it. Because this is all I do. I pore over the news every single day. No, Cassidy Hutchinson is not afraid of being attacked by anybody unless, of course, as I said, you can point out someone who magically had a fatal car accident or committed suicide during the Trump administration. Didn't happen. Did not happen. Didn't happen. Or I would have reported it. Meanwhile, because of Democrat stylings from one end of the country to the other, people are actually getting attacked. A woman last night in New York in the Upper East Side got shot in the back of the head by an assassin. Cops are being ambushed and executed on the spot. Why? Because the American left keeps doing a couple of different things. Thing number one, anybody who wants to have a weapon to defend themselves with is obviously somebody who is a pro-gun thug. That's thing number one. Thing number two, the left of America keeps telling anybody who will listen that white people are just seething racists, bent on the destruction of anybody who's not white. These are the same people that talk over and over and over again about how terrible cops are. Are there terrible cops? Yeah. We've had more cops shot, killed, maimed since all this started happening, since 2020, than at any other time in our history. Is this a coincidence? No. No, that's not a coincidence. These people run their mouths, and Republicans get shot. These people are compromised by other people, and these other people magically commit suicide or have fatal heart attacks or fatal car wrecks. Nobody says a word about that stuff. Didn't happen during the Trump administration. When did it happen? During the Obama administration? During the Clinton administration? The Clinton administration was especially good because there was something referred to as the FOB. That was a genuine enforcement mob. Friends of Bill, FOB. Well, John David, how do you know about the FOB? Well, because I was given an on-air explanation by Jennifer Flowers in person. Trump doesn't have he doesn't have those kinds of people working around him. And if he did, we'd know about it. Vince Foster, ring a bell? Suddenly committed suicide. How interesting. More sooner? Yeah, about half the number of cops were killed during Trump's presidency than there are now. About half. Read the papers, Isaac. I do every day. So when we start talking about all this stuff, we start talking about witness intimidation. Prove it. By all means, prove it. If there's witness tampering, prove it. It's not a difficult matter to put FBI protection around anybody. It wasn't long ago that there was FBI protection around this house for a completely different reason. It can be done. It can be done. So protect her and then start naming names. Let's go. Yeah, that's a bad, it's bad to bring up Seth Rich, right? Because you're talking about what happened afterwards. I'm trying to figure out who killed Seth Rich to begin with. Just saying. That's a bad argument. So you need to stop making it. Chief Guadiano, what's going on, you great big stud? Hope everything's all right. Good. I will, Isaac. Thanks very much for your input. You've been listening to the Wells Report. My name is John David Wells. Thanks very much. If you've enjoyed this broadcast, by all means, share it with your friends. Please do so. Please. I would appreciate it because I'd like to do this for a living. We'll get back to you on that soon. See you tomorrow for the Friday edition of the Wells Report. All right, wonderful people. Thanks very much for everything. God bless you and God bless your endeavors. I'll talk to you later.